Internal links remain one of the quickest ways to rank #1 in Google for keywords that drive actual pipeline for your business. In fact, internal links were absolutely essential to ensuring that we could rank our clients as an HR #1 for not only HR software, but also for HR sister as well. Now, the issue with internal links are two things. Number one, people consistently do not know how to optimize them, so therefore they don't rank #1 for their target keywords. But even worse, number two, they often build them in a way that risks a Google penalty. And today in this video, what I'm going to do is walk you through step by step how to build an internal link map that looks something like this. What we've got is the source URL on the left-hand side. We've got the linking page or the target page URL in column C. We've got the anchor text that we're using. We've got the original paragraph. We've even had the system go through and rewrite the paragraph to include the internal link in that specific paragraph. We've then given an insight into where the internal link sits, because the higher the internal link is on the page, the more page rank it passes. We've given a confidence level so that if the internal link was maybe put not so naturally into the paragraph, into the sentence, then it'll be a lower confidence, whereas the higher confidence is that the internal link fits naturally. Next to this, we've even given an implementation plan so that they can implement this into the Storyblock CMS. And this is exactly what I'm going to show you how to build, regardless of whether you have 10 pages or 10,000 pages across your site, how you can build an internal link system as powerful as this and start ranking #1 for those target keywords that drive actual revenue for your business. This is not one to miss. Let's get into the video. So to ensure that there is no doubt whatsoever, what is an internal link? An internal link is quite literally just a link from one of your pages to another page on the same website. So if I owned b2bseosoftware.com and I linked to my content writer landing page from my homepage, that would be an internal link. And again, if I then linked from my content writer landing page to my, resource or blog, which was how to write content with AI, that would also be another internal link. Now, Google uses these essentially to distribute page rank and understand a site's hierarchy. So if, for example, we got a link from the bbc.co.uk because we did some digital PR or something like that, we got a nice link to our, God, I'm struggling with this today, aren't I? We got a nice link from the BBC to our homepage. What Google then does is essentially follow this link to our homepage. It will then look at all the internal links that we have on the homepage to all of our deeper pages, and it will essentially pass the page rank or the authority throughout the site through these internal links. So this is why internal linking is so important, because if we do all this external work, all these backlinks that we build over time, and backlinks are still the holy grail of SEO, we want to make sure that we can pass the authority throughout the site, and we do this really through internal links. Now, there's quite a lot that goes into this in respect of the context of the page that the source URL sits, how high up the page that the link sits, the context, so the words before and after the internal link. All these make a difference into sort of how much page rank is passed, as well as the anchor text, as well as how keyword rich that anchor is. So typically what we want to have is a nice site structure where all the relevant pages all link between one another, and then all the page rank can flow nicely throughout a website. And if you're still a little bit unsure about internal links, there have been studies done time and time again showing that, broadly speaking, the greater the number of internal links that we build on a site, typically the more traffic we will drive from Google. Now, this does hit a point of diminishing return, where if we do hit into the 80, 90, 100 internal links, typically more common on enterprise sites, I would say, then the traffic does sort of start to drop down and level out. But really, broadly speaking, the more internal links that we build, the greater the amount of traffic that we can drive to our site. Now, I gave you the example of how we ranked Sedan HR #1 for HR software. I'm going to show you an example of how we might want to do this across some of their other target pages. So if I come onto the website here, I drop down to solutions. What we're going to do is essentially go through a handful of couple of target key pages, target keywords that we might want to use as internal links. So if I go to the solutions here, we've got recruitment. So they've got a recruitment. What I'm going to do is just open up a spreadsheet. I'm going to put URL, and then I'm going to not invent, but give like an estimate of what the target keyword might be. It's usually in the H1 or the slug. So let's say the recruitment page would target something like recruitment software. Let's now go to another page, maybe performance management. So the slug here is performance management systems. Let's use that. And let's do one more. What else have we got here? Time tracking. So we've got time tracking software. Let's use that as the target keyword. Now, if you've got a site that is already pretty rich in blog content, then you've got a fantastic starting point. And I know for a fact that because we've been working with Suzanne, we have thousands of blogs sitting across their domain. So what I'm going to do is crawl through every single blog using Screaming Frog, and then I'm going to extract the internal links. So I'm just going to pick that. I'm going to open my Screaming Frog interface. Let me squeeze into the viewpoint here. I'm going to go into crawl configuration. Now we don't need all of this. We want to make the crawl as efficient as possible, right? Because otherwise we'll be here all day. We do want internal hyperlinks, so I'm going to crawl and store those. Let's keep canonicals. We don't really need anything else. Screaming Frog does have a free version, I think up to like 500 URLs. So if you've got a relatively small site, you should be able to do this completely free of charge as well. And what I'm going to do is just untick the check links outside of start folder and check crawl outside of start folder. We just want to crawl through the blog content and then subsequently export the internal links from those blogs. So what I'm going to do is pause this and wait for it to complete. Okay, so this has now completed. It's crawled just shy of 2,000 URLs, which isn't too bad. What we're now going to do is export the list of blogs. Now, there's two ways you can do this. The first way is you can export all the internal links. This will save Claude doing a job of identifying any existing references or links that we've made from the blog to the target pages. The other way is you just export the blog and have Claude go through and find those itself, basically. What I'm going to do is just export the list of blog URLs and then open it up into a Google Sheet and just tidy it up before we give it to Claude. Okay, once this has opened up, what we want to do is just tidy it up a little bit. So there's a few things that you can do. Firstly, we don't really need all of this. Sorry, we don't need most of this, rather. Ideally, we only want URLs that are live and indexable and therefore serving a 200 status code. So what I'm going to do is actually just remove everything to the right of indexability status. I'm then going to filter out anything that isn't serving a 200, and I actually do this by doing it the other way around. So anything that isn't 200, we're going to remove it. We're now going to remove anything that is non-indexable because it's not going to necessarily pass any page rank. We only want indexable URLs. And we also don't want any like paginated pages, like category pages and things like that. So I'm actually going to filter these at the URL level, anything with category. We're also going to remove, and then sometimes it's just trying to find common URL paths. That's put us to 600 blogs. I think that's a pretty good place to be going on with. Now let's remove the other columns because they're not necessary. And what we're now going to do is download this as a CSV. We're going to download our target URL with the target keyword as a CSV, and we're going to feed it into Claude with a prompt. So I've uploaded my two spreadsheets, two CSVs into Claude. I'm now going to ask it to create an internal link map. Please, can you create an internal link map that looks at all the blogs given in the internal all CSV? The other CSV is the target URL with the target keyword. I want the system to essentially go through the blogs, identify where it would naturally fit to include the a link to the target page using the target keyword provided as the anchor text. If there's already a reference or a link to the target page, do not duplicate, so don't include a target link. If we're finding that there's a highly relevant page that it talks specifically about the solution that we're linking to, I want to ensure that that internal link is higher up the page. If there's less relevancy to any of the target pages that I've added, then have this either lower down the page or use a broader sort of phrase match of the anchor text. If there's absolutely zero relevancy between blog and any of the target pages that I'm giving to you, then do not feel obliged to include an internal link. I want there to at least be some relevancy between the blog and the target URL. My expectation is that you will provide a CSV that will have the original paragraph and then an edited paragraph that shows how you've tweaked that paragraph to include the internal link with the anchor text within it, and the output should be a CSV. Please also provide a confidence score of how naturally fitting the anchor text and the target URL has fitted into the paragraph that you have amended. Please create the plan and summarize this back to me so that I know you've understood it. So what we're now going to do is just feed that all into Claude. I like to ask it to plan and summarize everything that I say first, just to make sure that it's understood it. Now, I've been in SEO for the best part of 10 years now, so I know what I'm looking for when I create these things. I've created them manually with, God knows how many spreadsheets back in the day. Last summer, I started using ChatGPT and category filters to do this. Now, we can pretty much not necessarily always one-shot it, but get pretty close. So let's see how far we get with this one. Okay, cool. So Claude has come back with a plan. 619 blog URLs. Yep, looks about right. 3 target URLs and anchor text pairs. Yeah, so these are the target keywords for the target URLs that we selected at the start. It's given us some logic here. Assess semantically relevance between the blog and the target URLs. Yep, high relevance, 0. Yep. It's given us an outline for the CSV that we want to create. Okay, so this looks pretty good. Okay, so I'll be totally honest with you. I would usually run something like this in Claude Code, and this is kind of the reason why. So when it gets to large data sets, Claude itself needs to essentially build a Python script to be able to run it. And that's because it's got to go through a lot of data. It's got to go through every single line of HTML for every single page. So that really does add up. So it gives us sort of 2 options here. So the first one's to run it in batches. That's a little bit more efficient on the local scale running from Claude Desktop, but it's also given us the option to essentially run it via Python script. And when I've done this in the past via Claude Code, like I did with the example I showed you at the start, that's just kind of, you build that with the plan, right? You don't really run into these, you just kind of hit accept and it does it. So what I'm going to do is go ahead with option B, build the Python script. The spreadsheet will end up being saved in a folder that you can subsequently then open. So it might not be able to open the whole thing within Claude Desktop, but hey, let's see how we get on. Okay, so we've now come back with a plan, and it's a pretty beefy one as well. So what it's telling us to do is essentially run a Python script in our terminal. Now, I don't want to get super complicated on this specific setup. So what I'm going to do is try and show you how I would now manage this as a non-technical. So what it's done is it's given me essentially a zip file of all the files that I've briefed it with a README that I've opened up here, kind of explaining everything that the Python script is going to create for us. Now, what I'm going to do is essentially take this zip file that I've got here and put it into Claude Code and ask it to run the specific file using the readme.txt. So if I come into Claude Code over here, okay, so what I've done is I've said, take a look at the README, install the required dependencies and run Cezanne internal link mapper.py. And what I've also done is I've just created a new folder to store everything down here as well, and we're running it locally. Now, bear in mind, this run could take 1 to 2 hours, so I might have to pause the video and then come back to see what the output eventually looks like. What we're doing as we go through this, we're just going to allow it to run all the commands it needs to run. So don't, broadly speaking, don't worry about too much what it actually says. It's a usual sort of process it needs to go through. So you can see here, estimated runtime is 1.5 to 2 hours. I'll let you know when it's finished. It's also asking me for an Anthropic API key. If you come into your console, it's quite straightforward to get. In the interest of time, what I've asked it to do is just give me a sample of what this sheet looks like when it's found instances to place the links, basically. And it's given me an export with 17 internal links. What I'm going to do is open up the sheet and just sort of show you what the output looks like. You'll see in your folder that it's created like the actual internal CSV or the link map CSV, which wasn't there beforehand. So what we're going to do is upload this in a new sheet. Let's take a look at it. Okay, cool. So we've got the blog URL in column A. We've got the target URL in C. We've got the target keyword. It's given us an already linked, yes, no. Relevancy score, NF, it's already been linked, no, 6. Placement, sort of midway down the page. The anchor text used, time tracking software. The original paragraph. Some vendors pitch an HR platform with a core module that sounds like everything it does until you want it to actually do everything. That was the original. The edited, if I bring this over here, some vendors pitch an HR platform with core module, sounds like it does everything until you want it to actually do everything, such as comprehensive. We can see the link to the URL, time tracking software functionality. So I'd say that sounds pretty good. And actually a 6 out of 10 is about right there. You could probably have put any one of these features after it. What I'm going to do is just jump onto this blog URL and just show you where this exists. So it says it's sort of midway up the page. Let's take a look. So I know it has the word core within it. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So some vendors pitch an HR platform with a core module. Sounds like it does everything until you want it to actually do everything. So yeah, it then references one of the features, and it's relatively, yeah, it's about halfway down the page. So I would say that this is very much on the right track to creating that internal link map that we want. I would say the one thing it's just missing is an implementation plan. So let's ask that. This looks great. Can you give me an implementation plan to do this at scale with WordPress? And of course, you could just put in any CMS depending on where your site is hosted, whether that's Webflow, WordPress, Storyblock, or another system. After a few minutes, it's giving us this lovely step-by-step walkthrough as to how to implement this at scale, because realistically, we can't do this one by one. And my recommendation when doing this is essentially spot checking a handful of these URLs, make sure that the sentence exists, making sure the edited paragraph exists in the context of the page, and that wonderful, juicy internal link with that keyword rich anchor sits nestled within it as well. But this should be a pretty good basis to then start that implementation. And in turn, what you can actually also do is start using AI to help part do some of this implementation as well. But usually working with a dev is usually the safest bet, but you can do this directly with AI as well. Now, if you've stuck around until this point, I really appreciate it. If you sign up to the link in the description, I provide free access to the internal link mapping skill, which means that you don't need to go through the hassle of trying to prompt Claude to get the output like this that you're looking for. So sign up to the link in the description. You'll be sent a Notion board that looks like this. The Notion board has the show notes to every single video that I've ever created across YouTube. If you click the first link, I will pad this out a little bit. You've got a downloadable MD file that you can add directly to either your skills section in Claude, or you can just copy and paste it and run it directly in the interface. If you like videos such as this, leveraging the power of AI and Claude for marketing and SEO perspectives, then please subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, I will see you on the next video.